given me the opportunity to do this at the Sheehy Skeffington School last year. I was also saying something about the Human Rights and Equality Commission. I'm a former member of the Human Rights Commission for 10 years and a member of the working group that was set up to advise on the merger of the Human Rights Commission and the Equality Authority. And I think these are very important bodies, and therefore I think it's very important in a setting of people from civil society and involved in NGOs working at the coalface for disadvantaged, marginalised people, to talk about the current situation about these bodies and what's happening to them. They were once quite powerful bodies, and they were once held up as an example to the rest of Europe as to the type of human rights and equality defending bodies they should set up, but sadly things have changed. And it's deeply disappointing that 3 years after this government came to power and promised to repair the damage done by their predecessors to the Human Rights Commission and the Equality Authority by creating a new and enhanced Human Rights and Equality Commission, that it is only this week that they have introduced a bill to put the new body on a proper legal basis. So it has existed for nearly 3 years now. The two bodies have existed for nearly 3 years now in a situation where the existing bodies are being run down and a new body is to be set up, and the people appointed to the commission are commissioners designate for the new body. But the new body has no legal standing. It doesn't have any statute setting it up. And in the meantime, a policy of almost studied neglect by the government has reduced the two existing bodies to mere shadows of their former selves. Staff numbers have reached their lowest point since the two bodies were set up around 14 years ago. There's no chief commissioner for either the Human Rights Commission or the Equality Authority, and the Equality Authority is now minus its chief executive as well. The Irish human rights and equality watchdogs were once held out as models for other countries to follow. Now they are barely treading water, and for an example of the effect of this, they played no role in the recent crisis that has shaken the Garda Síochána to its core. Normally you would expect that these bodies would have been in the forefront of campaigning about that. And that is not, of course, the fault of the remaining staff of the two bodies or the commissioners designate of the new body. They're working hard and they're doing their best with wholly inadequate resources and with a vacuum at the top of the organisation where there should be leadership being given. Introducing the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission bill earlier this week, Justice Minister for the moment anyway, Mr. Alan Shatter, said that he had made a personal commitment to strengthen the new merged body and to ensure that it complies unequivocally with the UN's Paris Principles for National Human Rights or Equality Bodies. But will the bill he introduced serve that purpose? The core element of the Paris Principles is that national human rights and equality bodies must be genuinely independent of government. But under this bill, the new Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission will be under the umbrella of the Department of Justice and Equality, which will determine its funding and its staffing complement. And references to the Minister for Justice and Equality appear in nearly every other paragraph in the bill. Now you might think that this is due to the ego of the particular individual who is the Minister for Justice, which is known to be large, but if that was all it was, you could live with it. But it means that the Minister actually has a say in almost all the activities of the new organisation, or would have under this scheme. And of course, the Department of Justice and Equality, under which the new body is to be placed, like the old bodies, is the single government department most likely to come under scrutiny from the new Commission. And it's the department most likely to have the greatest incentive to control the Commission's work. And that can be done by handling its budget and cutting its budget, and that's what was done by the previous government. Relations between the Department of Justice and the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission were often fraught in the past. And when the Human Rights Commission was placed briefly under the umbrella of the Department of Community, Rural and Gaeltacht Affairs for some months in 2010, it was regarded as a blessed relief by many of the staff and commissioners. And actually what happened was there was such a severe dysfunctional relationship between the Department of Justice and the Commission and the Equality Authority at that time that there was pressure put on by the Green Party in government to remove them from the Department of Justice and put them under the Department of Community, Rural and Gaeltacht Affairs and under directly the Green Minister, Mary White. And as I say, it was almost a halcyon period for the two bodies. They weren't being interfered with anymore, and there were no more threats to cut their budgets if they said boo about the government. The outgoing Human Rights Commission and a number of international human rights bodies have called for the new Commission to be removed from under the shadow of any government department and made answerable only to the Oireachtas, like the Office of the Ombudsman is. And it seems to me entirely appropriate that that should be done, that a human rights body should not be connected with any particular government department. And that would be the best solution. But if that is a step too far for the current government to take, then transfer to a department that's unlikely to be the subject of frequent complaints to the Commission would be the next best option, together with removing the constant references to the Minister throughout this bill. Now, there are a lot of other... The bill is not particularly bad. There's some good things in this bill, I have to say that, because it's partly based on the report of a committee I was a member of. And there are things like introducing a positive duty to promote human rights by all public organisations and so on, and that is valuable. But there's quite a lot of tinkering that can and should be done with this bill as it goes through the Oireachtas. But as I say, probably the single biggest issue is the question of independence, and independence structurally and in terms of funding. Who determines its budget? Now, granted, any public body, the budget must be determined ultimately by the government through Parliament. But to have the budget totally in the hands of a particular department and a particular minister who is likely to be the minister that there will be most conflict with is entirely unacceptable and improper. Now, should any of this matter to civil society and the NGOs working at the coalface with marginalised and disadvantaged communities? People may be saying that, and unfortunately the run-down situation of the two bodies has led people to almost forget their existence in their day-to-day struggles. But it is the case. The Equality Authority did tremendously important work in particularly promoting gender equality, and equality for disabled people and so on. It's a very, very important body, and it has done very important work. The Human Rights Commission did quite important work. It wasn't as active as I would have liked it to be, but it did some important things, including criticising the government for its collaboration with the rendition policy of the United States, and that's really what sparked the government's real anger and prompted them to slash the budget of the organisation. But I would suggest that in our increasingly bureaucratic and professionalised society, there's a need for similar levels of professionalisation and expertise to be available to those who are seeking to hold the government to account. And that can only be provided by public funding. And the events of the last few months here, such as the disgusting treatment of whistleblowers in the Garda Síochána, and the long-term interception of phone calls in Garda stations and prisons, and the benign neglect, to put it at its mildest, of the Department of Justice in relation to all this, demonstrate clearly the need for strong, well-resourced and fully independent watchdogs to watch the watchers and the phone tappers. A well-funded and strongly independent Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission could be a powerful ally to those who are struggling daily to create a better and fairer society. There's an opportunity now in the debate on this bill, which has just been introduced, to influence the character and powers of that body, and it's an opportunity that should be taken. And I just add to that to say that I felt in the past years on the Human Rights Commission that the NGO community did not engage enough with these bodies. Some people in the NGO community, I think, took the attitude, these bodies have been set up, let them get on with it. Some of them may even have said that because there were some people on these bodies who were from an NGO background, that they would ensure that the NGO perspective was reflected. But it's not as simple as that, and there needs to be constant engagement between the NGO community and the Human Rights and Equality body in order to keep it aware of what the real agenda is for people on the ground, and keep pressure on that body, which is actually a help to the members of the body themselves to take a more active and radical attitude. So I do think it's very important to the grassroots community movement, to the NGOs, that you have these state bodies, but that it's important that they're independent and that there's constant interaction between civil society and the human rights and equality protection mechanisms. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.